I'm Dan Mitchell of the Cato Institute, here to narrate a video on class warfare tax policy for the Center for Freedom and Prosperity. President Obama has stated that he wants the rich, however they are defined, to pay higher income tax rates. He also wants them to pay higher payroll tax rates. He wants to increase the double taxation of their dividends and capital gains. Last but not least, he also wants to hit them with a 45% death tax if they create a nest egg for their children. Are these policies good ideas? Persecuting so-called rich people with oppressive tax rates may be popular with some voters, but it's not a good idea for the American economy unless you think we should be more like a European welfare state with high unemployment and lower living standards. There are 5 compelling reasons why higher tax rates, especially steeper tax penalties on investors and entrepreneurs, are misguided. First, high tax rates on the rich reduce incentives for productive behavior. Ronald Reagan used to say that when you tax something, you get less of it, and when you subsidize something, you get more of it. Politicians actually understand this principle, at least when it suits their purposes. They routinely seek to impose higher taxes on things such as alcohol and tobacco, and they explicitly argue that we need those higher sin taxes to discourage drinking and smoking. I don't think it's the government's job to control our private lives, but the politicians are right about the impact of higher taxes. Unfortunately, those same politicians conveniently forget this lesson when they decide they want to tax work, saving, investment, risk-taking, entrepreneurship, and other forms of productive behavior. And just as high sin taxes discourage drinking and smoking, high income taxes discourage income. Now, some of you may be thinking, who cares whether rich people earn more money? But you're missing the point. The issue is whether the economy is dynamic and prosperous. And that matters to all of us. It's no coincidence that ordinary people in high-tax European welfare states suffer from higher unemployment and lower living standards. When politicians try to punish the rich, it's the rest of us that pay the price. As Winston Churchill famously said, for a nation to tax itself into prosperity is like a man standing in a bucket and trying to lift himself up by the handle. Second, high tax rates on the rich won't raise much revenue. As we explained in our video series on the Laffer curve, high tax rates discourage people from working, saving, and investing. This means they earn less taxable income. High tax rates also encourage people to hide, shelter, and underreport their income. And this tax avoidance and tax evasion also reduces taxable income. And if taxable income falls enough, it can completely offset the impact of the higher tax rate, meaning less revenue. Let's look at a real-world example. In 1980, when rich people were getting hit with a 70% tax rate, IRS data show that people making over $200,000 reported $36 billion in income and paid $19 billion in tax. By 1988, when the tax rate fell to 28%, the amount of income reported above $200,000 jumped to more than $350 billion. And rich people paid $99 billion in tax, 5 times as much as when the tax rate was much higher. This wasn't an ordinary Laffer curve. This was the Laffer curve on steroids. In most cases, though, tax hikes do lead to more revenue, but not nearly as much as politicians expect, which raises the question of why they're willing to impose a lot of damage on the economy when they collect so little revenue. Of course, sometimes politicians like higher tax rates solely for reasons of spite. President Obama said during the campaign, for instance, that he wanted to raise the capital gains tax rate even if the government collected less money.
But actually, Bill Clinton in 1997 signed legislation that dropped the capital gains tax to 20%. Right. And George Bush has taken it down to 15%. And in each instance, when the rate dropped, revenues from the tax increased. The government took in more money. And in the 1980s, when the tax was increased to 28%, the revenues went down. So why raise it at all, especially given the fact that 100 million people in this country own stock and would be affected?
Well, Charlie, what I've said is that I would look at raising the capital gains tax for purposes of fairness.
Third, higher tax rates on the rich won't help the poor. Class warfare types mistakenly assume the economy is a fixed pie. So if someone like Bill Gates or Tiger Woods is earning a huge amount of money, that means the rest of us get less. But that's not how the real world operates. The best way of helping the poor is faster growth. The chart shows that per capita GDP has increased dramatically over time. Some people, of course, get richer faster than others get richer in a dynamic economy, but there's nothing wrong with that if people are earning money honestly. Imposing punitive tax rates may be an effective way of discouraging people from getting rich, but that does not translate into more income for anyone else. Fourth, high tax rates on the rich will make America less competitive. Globalization increases the rewards for good policy and also increases the penalty for bad policy. Simply stated, it is now increasingly easy for labor and capital to cross national borders. So when a nation imposes high tax rates, it has all the bad effects already described, and it also means that some jobs and investment wind up going to other countries. We described this powerful phenomenon in our video on tax competition and explained how other countries are learning the right lessons and lowering tax rates. Thanks to our high corporate tax rate, America already is losing jobs to other nations. Now some politicians want to compound the damage by raising personal income tax rates on entrepreneurs and investors. Last but not least, high tax rates on the rich lead to higher tax rates on the rest of us. When the income tax was first imposed way back in 1913, the top tax rate was only 7%, and it only applied to the top 0.5% of the population. Today, the tax burden on the rich is much higher, but so is the tax burden on you and me. What the politicians don't want us to understand is that there aren't enough rich people to finance big government. So whenever they want to raise taxes on regular people, they begin the process by sticking it to upper-income taxpayers. Their theory is that regular people can be tricked into accepting higher taxes if their better-off neighbors are getting hit even harder. Unfortunately, the only winners in that game are the politicians. Let's bring this to a close. Ayn Rand's famous novel, Atlas Shrugged, was a powerful story about what happens if the productive people decide that they're tired of being fleeced by government and go on strike. If America pursues class warfare tax policy, we may soon have the real-world version of Atlas Shrugged. As nations like France have demonstrated, punitive tax rates on investors and entrepreneurs lead to economic stagnation. Please share this video with others so that more people understand this critical issue. I'm Dan Mitchell. On behalf of the Center for Freedom and Prosperity, thanks for your attention.